Now, as we get closer to the month of June, this is when both John and Dave are going to begin their marketing plan for the Ahsoka Tano series ahead of its August release date window. And by the way, we have the final trailer for that series debuting by this July. So there's a lot of things coming out of the marketing by John and Dave to really kind of hype the fans up for what is best described as the home run for Star Wars on Disney+. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future Star Wars updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support, and without wasting too much of your time, let's get right into the subject. Now, what's really interesting about Kathleen Kennedy is that she has been really promoting Indy 5, I believe, in the worst ways possible, and I like to call her the disaster artist because she is somebody that has literally destroyed, or at least tarnished, quite a number of brands out there. We have seen what she did to Willow, we've seen what she did to Star Wars, and now we're seeing what she is doing to Indiana Jones. Now, thankfully, Star Wars, right now where it stands, it's mostly in control of John, Dave, Tony Gilroy, George Lucas, and yes, even Timothy Zahn. This is the current dream team, quote-unquote, that's gonna drive Star Wars in a different path. But what's even all the more worrisome is that, believe it or not, Kathleen Kennedy has some kind of hand in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, given that she's a very good friend of Kevin Feige, and she kind of gives him a direction on how to treat those films. And I think that's why we're seeing a downshift in a lot of Marvel projects. It could very well be related to that. Now, moving on to the next big thing here about why Kathleen Kennedy was literally fired from Hollywood, restricted from all these different studios, etc. Now, with Lucasfilm's Kathleen Kennedy creating more issues with Indy 5 and how she's been handling the backlash from fans already, and the below-average reviews from critics, recently Kennedy was completely restricted from Hollywood after many studios learned about her Indy 5 struggles, and when word got out after Cannes Film Festival that this movie had no magic. The list of Hollywood studios continue to grow that are now restricting her from ever getting hired. For Kathleen Kennedy, this now ranges from Universal, DreamWorks, Paramount, Warner Brothers, 20th Century, Lionsgate, Sony Pictures, and yes, even Columbia Pictures, all of which have now accepted to never hire Kathleen Kennedy for anything if she ever comes to them for a project after realizing what she now did to both Star Wars and Indiana Jones, and even Willow. The bigger part of this story that is unraveling involves the fact that the main reasoning why they will also not hire her, not anymore, is that they realized that Kathleen Kennedy was using her husband Frank Marshall as a way to get in or hired by other studios since he holds so many connections. So let me just pause here quick before I get to the next big piece. I don't know if you guys knew this, I know some people may come to this as a big surprise, but she does have a husband, and a very powerful husband. Frank Marshall, big-time guy in the film industry, in the Hollywood sphere, and she has been using him as basically a direct connection to getting in eventually to a lot of those other studios. And after they realized this, they want nothing to do with her anymore because they have seen what she did with Indy 5, they have seen what she did with, so far, with the Star Wars franchise, and that also is going to just continue to go downhill, at least on her end of the spectrum, with Acolyte and Skeleton Crew. On the other hand, I'm looking forward to Ahsoka, given that it is the first project not handled by Kathleen Kennedy, nor will the Dave Filoni movie be handled by her at all as well, and a lot of other projects. So, Hollywood's beginning to realize that, yeah, if you drop all the nonsense, you can make a very profitable product. Look at Super Mario Bros., look at Sonic, look at Top Gun Maverick. I mean, these are prime examples of box office hits and blockbuster legends. That all because they just listen to the core fan base or the common moviegoers, right? If you look at Top Gun Maverick, it's a prime example of what a sequel should be like and how it should be handled that dedicates to two different generations, and it just works. So that's exactly what studios are now looking forward to more. We're getting this pushback where studios are finally beginning to get some sense knocked into them that the nonsense way was not the way, alright? And we all know what we're talking about, promoting all that crazy stuff, all those different agendas that just did not work well with the audience, that really deprived the story and the character development of those stories. So, moving on to the next. Alright, now with, of course, Indy 5's seemingly failure, Inbound, nearly all studios have now restricted Kennedy from even getting hired for both TV shows and movies, be it for streaming or theaters. This is why now Kennedy is moving along and going all out with her development of her own production company codenamed Starlight that she plans to launch by the end of 2025 to compete against Star Wars, Star Trek, and as Dune as well. After this realization through Marshall, studios backed away, and also after Indy 5's low reviews after Cannes, more studios are said to add on to the list of restricting Kennedy, especially after Indy 5's release in the States. Now, here's the thing about this, is that basically, a lot of people might think, is this something that Kennedy is doing on purpose by tarnishing brands that would serve as a competition against her own production studio? I'm not quite sure if that's the case. It might be a little, out of reach there, a little too overboard, but I would not be surprised if that were the case. What surprises me more than that is, why is she still hired at Disney if she is making her own production company on the inside and doing this while creating a competitor against Star Wars when she's making Star Wars material? Is just mind-boggling. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that she is the wife of a very powerful figure in the film industry, Frank Marshall. Very, up there this guy is. He really is. So, I would not be surprised if he has something to do with it, but let's not get into that kind of stuff, because let's just focus on what's really going on. So, Indy 5, alright? Coming out of that film festival that took place in France, a lot of critics that usually are meant to say positive things, more positive things usually, tend to do this, especially during early screenings. Even they didn't give this a positive rating. And that just goes to show you that this movie has truly lost its magic. There's a lot of major media outlets that are talking about this too, about how Indy 5 has the return of this heroic figure, but the magic and the thrill is just gone. It's vanished. It's not there. It's like an empty shell of what it once was. And you know what? That kind of reminds me of something similar. I think you all know what I'm talking about. So, Indy 5, that's the problem. It's a shell. It's an empty shell, and it's not going to be filled properly because there's no real sense of continuing this story 20, let alone 30 plus years later. After, of course, the one before Crystal Skull. I think that the first three are where Indiana Jones is at. The first three are amazing. Raiders of the Lost Ark is a great film. Temple of Doom did something different, and The Last Crusade, I think, personally, is one of my favorites out there. I love that film. But, yeah, guys, there's a lot of things going on with this. I would love to hear all of your opinions below in the comments, what you think about the studios restricting her. And when I say restricted, I mean they are literally just not allowing her to get hired. They don't want her at all coming on board ever in the future. So drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, guys, and I will catch you guys next time.